So here's a vocabulary development activity focused on introducing students to the elements of art. This would be a lesson that is part of a larger unit because there's 7 elements of art, and it takes some time to get through. The objective for today, for this particular lesson, is to have students be able to identify the primary element of art used in an artwork and to describe how the artist used it. So to start with, we list out the 7 elements of art, and the 2 particular ones that we're focusing on are line and space. The sentence frame that the students can use looks like this. It's a close. They can say, in this piece, the artist uses blank, that element of art. They can identify it, 2, and then they can describe what they noticed the artist did with that particular element of art. To begin with, we start with an excerpt from this Helen Hume's survival guide for art teachers. So this says, we see line as we look at the branches of a tree, a plowed field, a road going off into the distance or on the horizon. Movement and direction, energy and restfulness can be depicted through the use of line, which is often used to lead the eye to the main subject in a work of art. So that part about leading the eye to the main subject, that's what we're going to model in terms of guiding the students through the process of evaluating a piece of art in these terms. So focusing on line, these are some examples of line that you can see out in nature. When you see the silhouette of a tree, when you see, like Helen Hume said, the plowed lines in a field. Also the horizon line, if you're able to go to the beach, it's the line where the sky meets the sea, as Moana would say. So lines can be described in many, many adjectives, and these are just some of them. This is also coming from Helen Hume's book. Now, the line can be angular, bent, bold. The lines can meander. They can be parallel, and that's some intersection there with math terms. Lines can radiate. They can be rhythmic, straight, thick, so many different ways to describe the quality of a line. There's also emotional qualities of line, and these are the general trends, or the general qualities. If you have a diagonal line, it tends to produce a sense of tension or suggest a sense of movement and action within a piece. Horizontal lines, like the line of the ocean, the horizon line, they tend to be a little more calming, restful. Vertical lines are formal. They suggest poise, balance, support. You can see a lot of verticality in things like ancient Egyptian art. Now we jump into taking a focused look at one piece of artwork. This is The Raft of the Medusa by Theodore Géricault. The particular thing that I would start to ask students is, firstly, what did they notice first? And what lines about this piece to come to their view, and how is their eye naturally guided throughout this piece? And they commonly refer to the line of this mast. Some of them refer to the thin lines created by these ropes. Okay, but what's really wonderful, if they catch it, and this might take some guidance, is the implied line created by this mass of people. Okay, there's a diagonal line that dominates the action of the piece, and it guides the viewer's eyes along this path. And it's also a line that's important to the theme of the piece, because it points to opposite ends of a spectrum thematically, where Géricault is exploring the theme of death and resignation over here on the left, on the bottom left, versus on the opposite end over here on the top right, you see a person who's waving at hopefully a ship in the distance. You see that desperation, that willingness to catch someone's attention so that they can survive, right? So there's survival here and death and resignation there, especially since there's a father who is mourning the death of his son who he's holding, right? And there's actually a person who's sinking into the ocean who's already expired. So thematically and also compositionally, line plays a huge role in Géricault's work here. In this next part, I would want to model for the students how to use that particular sentence frame. So in this piece, the artist uses the element of line to guide the viewer's eyes from the bottom left to the top right of the central mass of people. That implied line is created by the collective limbs of the people reaching outward over here, and it thematically connects to the idea of, or the progression of death and resignation to survival and hope. Right? So that kind of statement would be something I model for the students. Okay. Next would come space. It follows much the same structure. I would start with this excerpt from Helen Hume, give some examples of space. In this case, this is negative space versus positive space, something very important. There can be literal space. This is James Turrell's installation work. So this is space you can actually, this is art you can occupy. And then we would take a focused look at this example from Leonardo da Vinci, The Last Supper. Space in this piece is created through one-point perspective. And I would ask students to, firstly, just without any more analysis, just let me know where their eye naturally tends to go. The hope is that they would notice that their eye naturally tends to go front and center over here to the face of Jesus. And there's a reason for that. Visually, if you break down the orthogonal lines, right, which are the lines receding back in space when you construct one-point perspective like this, all of those orthogonal lines lead and converge at this vanishing point, and that, very intentionally, Da Vinci put that right on Leonardo da Vinci's face. Okay, so naturally that's where the person's gaze is directed towards. And again, the second modeling would happen here for this using the sentence frame. In this piece, the artist uses the element of space to guide the viewer's eyes to the central focal point, or the main point of emphasis, which is the Messiah's face over here. After modeling that, these are the two graphic organizers I would leave the students with. The question for them to answer is the same on each one. Which element of art is primarily used in this piece, line or space? What emotion does the piece evoke? And what effect does the artist create with that element? Usually over here, I would be sure everybody understands what this word means, to evoke something. That's a tier 2 word. It means to draw out, right? You're drawing out an emotion. You're creating something and you're pulling something out of the viewer, right? So what emotion gets drawn out from looking at this piece? And in terms of the effect the artist creates, I would hope the students in this piece would be able to identify the primary element of art used here is line. And the emotion, they could just respond honestly, right? What comes up for them. But as far as the effect, the artist is creating a sense of movement. And he's depicting the quick speed with which these athletes are moving, right? And so this is Takehiko Inoue's work in the manga Slam Dunk. And hopefully, after this lesson, they'll be able to answer the same question for this image. Very different. And between line or space, the primary element of art used here is for sure space. Okay, this is like a fish, almost like a fisheye, slightly distorted 3-point perspectival view, right? And the effect the artist is creating with this element is a sense of vertigo, right? That might be used to highlight how high Spider-Man is, right? That kind of reinforces the heroic nature and the kind of heroic spotlights that's being put on this character. So those are the types of responses that I'd be looking for with this graphic organizer. And oh, my face has been covering up the question. Well, right here. So which element of art? That's what the question says right here. Okay, so that's my vocabulary development activity. Again, like I said, this is part of a larger unit, which would include eventually all 7 of these elements of art. And like I said, it takes some time to get through this, and it's one of the foundational skills students need to be able to evaluate art. Okay, thanks for listening.